Thank you so much for listening to the Family Brand Podcast. To say thank you, we have something really awesome we'd love to share with you.
You know, we often hear from families who will tell us that they just feel so overwhelmed because of the demands that are placed on them. They feel like they're constantly being pulled in so many different directions and spread thin, and they're spending time as a family, but they don't feel like it's quality time. They're not really connected, and they want to be more intentional. And we can certainly relate because we felt like that at one point in our family. And so we created a guide that allowed us to really be more confident around how we spend time as a family and what we say yes to and what we say no to. And it's just brought so much more peace into our home. It's made our lives so much more simple, and we want to share it with you. So if you go to familybrand.com/free, you can download the How to Take Back Your Family's Time guide, and I can promise you it'll give you more confidence and more peace in your life and in your family.
One last thing, we feel so inspired when we hear from families that we are making a difference for them. We would love it if you would leave us a 5-star rating and a review on the podcast so we can reach even more amazing families. We truly believe that the way we change the world is one family at a time.
Thank you so much for having me, Melissa.
We connected last week for the first time, Tal and I did, and he just wrote an incredible book about dads. And so I, looking at the calendar, I was like, well, it's almost Father's Day. Like, we got to do this podcast episode like right away so we can post in time for Father's Day. So we rearranged our schedule a bit to fit this in so that you can listen to this in just in time for Father's Day for all the dads out there and the moms too. So thanks for coming in a short notice so we can get this out to.
Hey, it's amazing of you to turn things around and make this happen. Father's Day is a perfect time for my book, so this will be great.
Okay, and I want to. Well, his book is called Dad Mode, which we'll get into a little bit more details here in a bit, but I'd like to start with, will you introduce yourself, Tal? Just who you are?
Yes.
What you're about?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Tal Eyre, and I live in Switzerland. I'm married to the lovely Anita Eyre, and we have a 12-year-old daughter. We live right in the Alps. It's literally Heidi Land here, where there's a little attraction down the street. So we interact a lot with goats and mountain goats. And we just went on a hike yesterday up this beautiful Via Ferrata. And there's all these cows around up there right now with these cowbells. It's pretty amazing. So we love living here. And I grew up in a family of 9 children. So I kind of have the experience of a single child family and then also of a very big family. I'm the 6th of 9 children. So it's been really fun to sort of have our own family here and make our life here. So that's a little bit about me.
When you say single child family, you and your wife have one daughter, is that correct?
One daughter, yeah. Our daughter Annina is 12 years old. Yeah.
Awesome. I traveled to Switzerland last summer and it was so charming. And I think my favorite part of the whole experience that I just felt like I was in a storybook is when I saw the cows like on the side of the hill with their bells on. I was like, oh my gosh, that couldn't be more charming. It was so beautiful.
Yes. I was just thinking that today, until they started kind of rubbing up against my cousin's rental van, and then we had to kind of move them out of the way.
Not so much. Bad.
But yeah.
We did not make the connection when we met last week, but I also come from a family of 9. I'm the oldest of 9, so that's kind of an interesting, weird thing that we both have in common. Such a large.
Oh wow, the oldest of 9, Melissa. We've got a lot to catch up on. I think there is something to this, birth, order. And my oldest sister, Saren, is amazing, and she's almost like a mother figure to me in some ways because she was so much older than I was when I was born. So I'm sure you have a little bit of that going on in your family as well.
Totally. Yeah. My oldest sons he's almost 17 and my youngest brother is 22. So in a lot of ways, they're much closer in age, than my son and my brother are much closer in age than me and my brother. So it's just
right.
Which I'm sure you have similar in your family too.
Yes. And we've just been spending time with my cousin Ben, who has 6 children, he and Ashley, and they just it's been so much fun to be back with like a big family and just like I can't believe like you guys can play a volleyball game all together. Like this is amazing. Like we could not do that. And I just remembered all those times from when we were growing up with just this big old group going everywhere. So it's it's fun to kind of be a part of that again a little bit.
And maybe we'll just dive into that part a bit here, which I warned Tal that I was going to ask him a few questions about this because Tal's being modest about his family. His family, his parents are like quite famous in certain parenting realms. I was telling him, I actually read his parents some of their parenting books when I was growing up. What did they publish primarily in the like 90s, I believe? So like 2000, and they still have like
Yeah.
Joy School, which all my siblings went to Joy School. I could sing you some Joy School songs right now.
No
And
way. All right, you got to do it, Melissa. I'm putting you on the spot. I'll sing with you, okay?
okay, I don't know
I'll
if
I'll
we
start one and then I'll see if you remember it, okay?
I,
All right. Oh boy, I've got joy. I
I do.
do.
I do.
It starts in my heart and spreads to my head.
In a minute.
There we go. We're
See, I
singing on
wasn't
the podcast.
I wasn't lying that I know your parents' content. And but what we talked about when we were visiting for a minute is that what a unique experience to like grow up in a family where your parents were writing about parenting and writing about families. What was that like for you growing up in that situation?
I gotta tell you, so being the sixth of nine, Melissa, as you know well, in a big family. So I remember this one moment where, my parents they were sitting around this big oval table that we had, and I had to kind of, like squeeze through behind the chairs to get past the wall, and I finally got to my seat. My parents had this new sort of system that they were trying to implement. And I remember looking around the table and just being so amused because not one single person was paying any attention. So, people were playing with their food. Some kids were kind of bickering, and some others were like, talking about other things. I'm like, why do they even try? Like, what are they doing? Like, and that kind of stuck with me. I was like, how many times are my parents going to fail before they just give up? But the reality was, and this is the big learning for me, is that the effort is actually what makes it amazing. The effort, because every once in a while something sticks, and that's what we found in our family. And now I got to say, like, I really enjoy being with my siblings. We all get together every summer. We have a nice connection. Sure, we still have our every few years we have a little squabble here or there, but we repair that quickly, and we just love being around each other. And I think that is a lot to do with their effort. It wasn't because they were super amazing all the time. We were fighting all the time as kids, like tons of stuff going on. It was crazy chaos, but overall, I think it was worth the effort. So yeah, that would be my answer to your question there.
That is really beautiful. In fact, yesterday, one of my sons, I won't say his name, but he kind of called Chris and I out like, "Hey, well, actually, I'll just say that we have family meetings like every Sunday, and
Hmm.
yesterday someone was mad, and so they didn't want to come to our family meeting, and then later, there was a lot of fighting, and I don't know, it's just so confronting, like me doing this podcast or me posting on social media
Yeah.
about strong families. And yet in the background, I'm like having my own struggles with family and participation. And, I'm
Yes.
wanting to always keep it real and not be like, we're the perfect family, but also then the feeling of like, but can I still talk about family in a way that
Right.
talks about
Right.
strong families, even though my family is not perfect? Um,
No, that's actually a great point. And I would say, Melissa, one of the things I've learned is that I would encourage the listeners as well to write a book, even if it's just in your mind or if it's in your journal or whatever, but like do some like this podcast and your family brand, which is it's so great online. All that I think is so helpful because I got to tell you, my parents, they would write books to figure out how to raise us. Like I remember very clearly, like we were taught about responsibility, like in a pretty strong way for a couple months. And then I was like, okay, what's their next book? Okay, teaching children responsibility. And they have to practice what they, preach or whatever they, like have to walk the talk. And and they really did. They really did a lot of the stuff that's in their books. And a lot of them were failures, but they really tried. And so I think I want to say, like, dads and families out there, just write your own good story, write your own book. And I think that's a key to it, because we're all just figuring it out. We're just kind of trying to figure it out, and it's a beast. Every family has a different story, and so we have to read the rooms that we're in and just make it happen the best we can.
Okay, let's shift to, well, actually, I want to ask you. I read you, Tal sent over a couple of things, like his bio, for example. I was looking over, and it said that you played basketball and that you are 6'9". Is that true?
Yes. Well, I'm actually 6'8". I think when I was in college, I think I was a little bit like telling a tall tale there, saying I was 6'9", maybe with shoes on, but I'm 6'8". But yeah, I did play basketball. I loved it. It was a big thing for me in the first 25 years of my life. And I look back on it with a lot of joy. I played for BYU my freshman year, and then I transferred to a community college my sophomore year, Salt Lake Community College. I'm super proud of that, and had a great time playing there. And then I transferred again and played my last 2 years at Weber State University. So super proud of that as well. And we actually had a really good team my senior year. We went to the big dance, and we had a 16-game winning streak, and just had an amazing team. It was really fun.
That's cool. Very cool. Very unique that you had that experience all the way through college. Cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, let's shift and talk about dad mode. So, like we said, you wrote a book. What had your daughter is 12, is that right?
Yep, 12.
And so what had you decide, I think I want to write a book about being a dad?
Yeah, I think it really started right when she was born. I mean, the first chapter is called Jumpstart Your Connection with Your Kid. I call it a way. It's a way of connection. Every chapter it's like this 5 to 10 minute meditation just on how to connect with your kid in 25 different ways. And so each way will tell a little personal story, give some background in positive psychology because I studied that, and then it'll give 5 action steps at the end on what you can do as a dad to connect with your kid with that topic. So what I did is I studied positive psychology, went to the University of Pennsylvania, and it's this amazing program where you study well-being, you study the good life and what that means. And I was learning all these really cool things, and I said, for my capstone project at the end of the master's program, you have to write something. And I said, I'm going to write a book proposal because I've seen how much my parents have done with books. I've gone on book tours with them, and I want to just kind of do that as well. So I went ahead and just wrote this book proposal. It was supposed to be called Flourishing Families was the book name in this. And I did a bunch of research on how to connect with your kids, and then it just developed over the last 10 years. It's been 10 years since I graduated. And I found out that my voice was much stronger just talking to dads, because dads have this different experience than moms. It's just a different paradigm. And so I just changed it to dads and kind of went to dad mode. And that's kind of how the book came together. So thanks for the question. Yeah. Hopefully that makes a little bit more sense to everybody now.
Yeah, totally. And so would you say your primary objective for this book and for dads was all about like connecting and connection with their child?
Yes. Yes. So in all my studies in psychology, I remember this book I read. I really recommend it. I think it's called Parenting from the Inside Out. And it's this amazing book by this neuroscientist, and we can maybe put it in the show notes or whatever. But basically, it's just amazing. And at the very end, he says the most important thing is we connect. And that stayed with me. And I thought, that's really the most important thing in parenting for me is to be emotionally, have a warm connection with my daughter. And there's actually this longitudinal study that's been done with Harvard for the last 80 plus years. And they say that the people that have the highest levels of happiness and health are those that have warm relationships with the people around them. And so I thought, well, why don't we figure out how to like go into that a little bit more in this book? So that's kind of the idea of the book, is to help dads to be directly connected and in a warm way with kids.
And, you've of course, wrote a whole book about ways to do this. Do you have one or two ways that someone listening could be like, "Oh, yeah, I want to implement something like this today for sure."
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I would say the one that I'm most proud of, Melissa, is the one about observation. So a lot of times, you think like in my first few chapters are about being proactive and doing these things. But I realized as I was going through raising my daughter, especially in the first decade, was a lot of it is actually, it's not observing in a passive way. It's sort of an active observing of what they are good at, what their strengths are, and then reflecting those things to them. And so I have this chapter where I basically called the observing dad and helping kids see their strengths. And shows this illustration. I've got these great illustrations in the book. This Brazilian illustrator did them, and he did a great job. And it shows his dad sitting on a lazy boy chair, and he's looking over after a big Christmas morning thing, and the son or daughter is over there just playing with all the boxes, and they discarded all the stuff that they got, but they just want to
Mhm.
build something. And I love that because every child just comes and you don't know what they're going to be like. And so observing them and then saying, you know what, I saw that you really enjoy inventing things. And if it comes up over and over again with them, then you give them an award. So they get the inventor award. And we did this with my daughter, and her whole bedroom door, back of the door, was filled with different awards that we had noticed about her. And it gave her a sense of confidence, like, okay, these are things that I'm good at. And we may be a little bit wrong on some of them, but
Mhm.
most of them I think are pretty close to being on. And that's a good way to connect, I think, with kids, is to help them see their strengths.
Yeah, it's so true. I think that as parents, that's one of our, at least I believe, one of our maybe divine jobs in a way, is like helping them see like who they really are and what their gifts really are and who they can become. And it almost feels sacred in a way because
Yeah.
it's hard, especially today with kids. And I think social media and cell phones, it's like that's almost obscured from them sometimes, like the things that they're really good at and who they really are. And so I love what you're saying there, that
Yeah.
parents and dad specifically can play a role in that.
Yes, we really can. Moms and dads are alike. I think that if I were to just cut through all this and say, okay, all the 25 ways there's some really amazing things about each one. They're my highlight reel. They're my favorite ways of connecting using psychology and other things. But I would say the reason that my family, my siblings and my parents are the closest, Melissa, is because we had we had I think that my parents had a sense of who they were, and they had the ability to know who they were. They had a what I would say they'd be loving and attuned and self-possessed, meaning they had a feeling of a connection within themselves. And that's one of the ways in the book. Way number two is self-connection. So I challenge dads to make sense of their life, think back on their past, think back on their childhood, and make sense of the ways that they were parented and how they want to maybe blaze new trails in the ways that weren't so healthy, but also continue some of the trails that were healthy, but make every generation a little bit better. So I've got a quote here that I absolutely love. I'd love to read it. Is it all right if I read it
Right.
real quick, Melissa? Okay, so it says here, and this is from a book I recently read. It says the roots of resilience are to be found in the sense of being understood by and existing in the mind and heart of a loving, attuned, and self-possessed other. And when I heard that, I was just like, this is amazing. And then she goes on, this is from Diana Foch, and she goes on to say, how you see me, I will learn to see myself. Isn't
Mm,
that powerful? And I really do think that my parents saw the best in us. They got mad at us, they made mistakes, but they really saw you have potential, you're gonna get there. I was a lost case in school. For a lot of elementary school, I was just terrible. But they always believed I would figure it out. And I did, figured it out. And so I would say to parents, keep that baseline of just this unconditional love and this projection of seeing the very best version you can of your kids. And then they'll get there. It's I've seen it. So that's what I'm trying to do with my wife and I are trying to do with our daughter.
I love that. I guess for any dads listening out there, what would be your Father's Day? I mean, it doesn't have to be a Father's Day message, but like your overall like message or Father's Day message to any dad listening.
Yeah. I would say I would say go in and the best gift you can give to your kids is to put the effort in consistently. I mean, that's actually what I'm not saying dads need to be there all the time and like you have a lot of things you need to do as a dad. But what I loved about my dad, it's he was really good at even when he wasn't with me, I could I could feel that he cared about me. So he would write me a letter. He would come to my basketball games. He would do like a interview every month or two with me just to see how I was doing. And I'd say to dads that the definition of dad mode, because of what I saw in my dad, and it's the art of consistent and focused effort towards a warm emotional connection with your kids. And if you're doing that, I think that, you don't have to put too much more pressure on yourself. You'll make mistakes, but you can repair those connections and then you can move forward. So,
Thank you. I do think that, like you mentioned earlier, so much of our parenting is what we saw, and we're either going to replicate the good parts, or it's like, oh, I'm not going to do that. It is interesting. I love how you addressed in your book, like really taking a look at that and examining it, and
yeah.
not just because I think we just move automatically through so much of our parenting journey, just absorbing those things that we've seen done.
Yes, right? Like it's almost this default. The way I do it, I talk about off-roading, and like, I love going on a four-wheel vehicle and driving through the mountains, and you get in these ruts, right? And you don't even have to turn the wheel because the ruts they're so deep in places. And I feel like that's the way that our brains work. We have these neural connections, and if they've fired together a lot, there's these trails in our brain, and we just consciously and subconsciously act the way that we were acted upon when we were little.
Mhm.
And we have to actively blaze new trails. That's really hard work as a dad, but I think it's important to recognize those things and then maybe blaze new trails sometimes.
Yeah, I agree. I just did a little Instagram post about that the other day. How that is one of the most confronting things about parenting for me.
Yes.
I don't know, just the thing that parenting brings up, the ways that I, didn't realize that I said it better on Instagram, but just like the wounds that I didn't know that I had, or the things like that I want to parent in a certain way so that I look good as a parent, but it's like
Yeah.
that's not. I don't believe that's the best way to parent. Like, do they, like you talked about, being in school and how your parents just held that belief for you? I'm like, that's so beautiful. And it would be so easy to be like, no, you have to get these good grades because that reflects on us as parents and on how we're doing.
Right.
And that's just one example, but it's so really hard to do to like separate like me looking good as a parent versus me like parenting like in the best way for my child.
Yeah. 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 I get what you're saying, Melissa. I feel like that is it's such a common struggle with all parents. I mean, we all feel that, and it's like, oh, and that's why I really recommend this in the second way, this self connection. There's this one Aesop's fable. If we have time, I just want to read it because it's so great.
Yeah.
Um, it says every man, or it could be woman, carries two bags about with them, one in the front and one behind. Both are packed full of faults. The bag in the front contains neighbors' faults, and the one behind their own. Hence it is that men and women do not see their own faults, but they never fail to see those of others. And I
Mm.
feel like that self-connection is really looking at those things in that bag behind us and actually looking to find joy in that. Like you have to be the kind of person who says, you know what am I doing that I'm not seeing right now? And maybe your spouse or whatever can help you with that. And sometimes it's a little like I don't want to do it because it's too hard. But I think that if we can start to try and embrace that, I think it's really good for us and for our kids in the long run.
Yeah, I found that as my kids get older too, they're willing to also share like where they feel like we could be doing better as parents and where, we're that we're not measuring up, but they're willing to share their perception of that bag as well. And I found that that's really insightful too, because I don't know what it's like to be parented by me or
Mm-hmm.
how they experience me as their mother. So I have appreciated. I mean, I don't always appreciate it. Sometimes, like you said, it feels hard to receive feedback sometimes,
Yeah. Yeah.
but when you can do it, it works.
That's well said. I think, yep. So there's just it's such a journey being a parent, and I've just it can be looked at as a pain, and it is a pain sometimes, but it also can be an amazing, fantastic journey of like, okay, I'm getting these things thrown in my face right now. I got to figure out how to work with this. And one of my favorite paintings in the world is in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, and it's these people out in the field at sunrise, and they're just working, and they're looking. One of them's looking over at the sunrise, and I feel like parenting is a lot like that. Like don't expect it to be like all glittery too often. It's a lot of hard work, but really there's a lot of satisfaction in it, and we don't talk about that enough. There's so much joy in parenting, and then it mixed in with all the difficulties. So anyway, that's uh that's my thought on those things.
Yeah, it's a good perspective to hold because you're right. Sometimes it feels like it's a lot of days of just hard.
Yeah, yeah, and I can only imagine. How many kids do you have, Melissa?
5.
5 kids. I've been around this family of 6 lately, and it's just amazing. Like, I just, I really have a lot of respect for the parents in that situation. And how do you manage it? What's your mindset? Can I ask you that? Like, what do you have in your head of what's your version of this, like these weeders out in the sunrise? Like, do you have something where that you say to yourself when it's difficult, or how do you actually make it through those long days?
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like when I'm okay, wait, let me gather my thoughts. What would I want to say to your question? First of all, I love the idea that I can try again tomorrow. Like when I realize I messed up today, I love the thought of like, okay, but I can start again tomorrow. There's been so many days where I'm like, okay, we'll start again tomorrow. And, I keep being blessed with another tomorrow to be able to
Great,
do that.
great.
And then I guess the other thing is also, I'm going to cry. It's just remembering like, although it's hard, like this is what I've always wanted.
Hmm.
So, like when I had my youngest two, they're very close in age. So I had 3 kids and then a little gap. And then I had 2 kids that were very close together. They're like 19 months apart. And my 4th and 5th babies. And it was super hard. And I remember the thing that I repeated to myself, like you were saying, is like I wanted it so badly. I knew I wanted like two other little babies. And so I was like, you wanted this and you chose this, and this is what I've always wanted. And so it doesn't, I think that takes it from me, like getting out of any like victim or like this just isn't working, which there are days where it feels like that too. But it helps me keep it like, no, I want to keep striving because this is what I've always wanted is this.
Right.
And in the future, it's like when I look back at the end of my life too, like I'm going to wish that I had, you know, given my all and tried my best. And this is where I want to give my best intention and my full effort.
Mm. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. I told you before the podcast, I got to ask you one question. I was hoping I could ask you one question, and thank you for allowing me to do that, because that's probably the most powerful thing that the listeners could hear today, because there's a lot of, yeah, I actually think these phrases and this kind of thing is really important. Maybe that's the last thing I could say, Melissa, is that the last chapters of the book, or last ways, are creating a vision statement as a family and identifying values. And I know you do a lot of this work with Family Brand, so I'm so happy that we have this overlap. But what I say is basically like, it's like a North Star for your family. So our vision statement is super simple. It's create good stories,
Mm.
and then love first. Whenever you go anywhere, remember to put love first. And I think that create good stories is a great way to just be like, hey, today's not a great day, but overall, this is going to be a good story. We're going to figure out how to have a good story. And it works for our family to just keep looking to that. Like, and I would encourage each family to just come together with something that you can actually just rally around and think about as a family to get through those difficult things, to go through the oscillations of up and down of family life. And in the long run, it's going to be a good story.
Yeah, I love how you say the oscillations of family life. Yeah, there's a lot of things I could talk about. Actually, we connected on
Bruce Feiler.
Tyler. Yes, he writes this article where he talks about oscillating family narratives. And I think that that's important. It's like, yeah, life is going to be up and it's going to be down, and it's all good. Like that's how it's meant to be.
Yes, that's the most healthy family narrative, is the oscillating one. And I think that it's helpful to remember that in those difficult times.
Okay, where can people find more of you, connecting with you further, Tal, and also find Dad Mode, the book?
Yes. So thanks so much for getting it out there. I think it's a wonderful Father's Day or Father's Day season book. It's available on Amazon, no problem. It's available on lots of different options. I saw it on Deseret Book. If anybody shops there, I've seen it, I think, in multiple places. But and it's all over the world. If we've got listeners anywhere, I've seen it in Romania, Portugal, in China. So it's exciting. It's been really cool to see how excited or how much of a response has come around this topic. And I hope that dads really enjoy reading it. It helps them to connect with their kids. So
Yeah.
I'm on Instagram at Tal Eyre, and I also have taleyre.com as well if you want to check out my website.
Okay, thank you. And we'll link to that in the show notes. Do you have, before we jump off, any last words for dads out there?
I would just say one of my favorite writers is E.M. Forster, and he wrote something in 2 words that was really impressive, and it's just only connect. And just keep thinking about that warm connection and figure out, there's a section in the book about repairing a rupture in a connection, and just figure out how to keep that connection, because it's the thing that lasts. It's the thing that will outlast us in our lives. And that's why I think we should just focus in on connect.
Awesome. Thank you, Tal, for visiting with us today and bringing your message in Dad Mode to the Family Brand podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here, Melissa.
Thank you so much for listening to the Family Brand podcast. To say thank you, we have something really awesome we'd love to share with you.
You know, we often hear from families who will tell us that they just feel so overwhelmed because of the demands that are placed on them. They feel like they're constantly being pulled in so many different directions and spread thin, and they're spending time as a family, but they don't feel like it's quality time. They're not really connected, and they want to be more intentional. And we can certainly relate because we felt like that at one point in our family. And so we created a guide that allowed us to really be more confident around how we spend time as a family and what we say yes to and what we say no to. And it's just brought so much more peace into our home. It's made our lives so much more simple, and we want to share it with you. So if you go to familybrand.com/free, you can download the How to Take Back Your Family's Time guide, and I can promise you it'll give you more confidence and more peace in your life and in your family.
One last thing, we feel so inspired when we hear from families that we are making a difference for them. We would love it if you would leave us a 5-star rating and a review on the podcast so we can reach even more amazing families. We truly believe that the way we change the world is one family at a time.